Okay. Okay, hi, grade 10. I'm back. I'm back with I'm back with I'm back with I don't know what to say na noon. Okay, hi, grade 10 again. So I'm back with chapter 4 because teacher Ing Ong did chapter 3, and as you know, that I think just a short recap of what happened. Charles Darnay was able to get off on a very interesting technicality because he looked much like the lawyer Sidney Carton. Okay, Bay. Okay, so anyway, so this is it was a successful case. I mean, he was found innocent. I mean, not found innocent, but the charges were dropped. And then you met so many interesting people also, like Barsad, I think Clay. You met Clay, Barsad, and all of that. So these characters are going to play very important roles in the story. And now we go to chapter 14. Okay? Now, so let's read together. Not chapter 14, chapter 4. Okay. From the dimly lighted passages of the court, the last sediment of the human stew that had been boiling there all day was straining off. When Dr. Manette, Lucy Manette, his daughter, Mr. Lorry, the solicitor for the defense, and its counsel, Mr. Stryver, stood gathered round Mr. Charles Darnay, just released, congratulating him on his escape from death. It would have been difficult by a far brighter light to recognize in Dr. Manette, intellectual of face and upright of bearing, the shoemaker of the garret in Paris. Yet no one could have looked at him twice without looking again, even though the opportunity of observation had not extended to the mournful cadence of his low, grave voice and to the abstraction that overclouded him fitfully without any apparent reason. While one external cause, and that a reference to his long lingering agony, would always, as on the trial, evoke this condition from the depths of his soul, it was also in its nature to arise of itself and draw a gloom over him as incomprehensible to those unacquainted with his story as if they had seen the shadow of the actual Bastille thrown upon him by a summer sun, when the substance was 300 miles away. Only his daughter had the power of charming this black brooding from his mind. She was the golden thread that united him to a past beyond his misery, and to a present beyond his misery. And the sound of her voice, the light of her face, the touch of her hand, had a strong beneficial influence with him almost always. Not absolutely always, for she could recall some occasions on which her power failed, but they were few and slight, and she believed them over. So the doctor, Dr. Manette, was already so detached from what happened to him in the Bastille. But sometimes it does come back. That darkness does come back. And though Lucy has not perfectly been able to get him out of that mess, but she was definitely a powerful force that could pull him out of the darkness. So she was a very important part of his life, and she was called the Golden Thread. Kiliga, Mr. Darnay had kissed her hand fervently and gratefully, and had turned to Mr. Stryver, whom he warmly thanked. Heath Stryver. Mr. Stryver, a man of little more than 30, but looking 20 years older than he was, stout, loud, red, bluff, and free from any drawback of delicacy, had the pushing way of shouldering himself, morally and physically, into companies and conversations that argued well for his shouldering his way up in life. He still had his wig and gown on, and he said, squaring himself at his client to that degree that he squeezed the innocent Mr. Lorry clean out of the group, "I am glad to have brought you off with honor, Mr. Darnay. It was an infamous prosecution, grossly infamous, but not the less likely to succeed on that account. You have laid me another you had laid me under an obligation to you for life in two senses," said his late client, taking his hand. "I have done my best for you." I have done my best for you. Excuse me, Mr. Stryver, whose idea was it? And now, where is Carton? Can you please just give him some recognition? I love Carton so much. I have done my best for you, Mr. Darnay, and my best is as good as another man's, I believe. It clearly being incumbent on someone to say much better, Mr. Lorry said it perhaps not quite disinterestedly, but with the interested object of squeezing himself back again. You think so? Said Mr. Stryver. Well, you have been present all day, and you ought to know you are a man of business too. And as such, quoth Mr. Lorry, whom the counsel learned in the law had now shouldered back into the group just as he had previously shouldered him out of it. As such, I will appeal to Dr. Manette to break up this conference and order us all out to our homes. Miss Lucy looks ill. Mr. Darnay has had a terrible day. We are worn out. Speak for yourself, Mr. Lorry, said Stryver. I have a night's work to do yet. Speak for yourself. I speak for myself, answered Mr. Lorry, and for Mr. Darnay, and for Miss Lucy. And, Miss Lucy, do you not think I may speak for all of us? He asked her the question pointedly, with a glance at her father. His face had become frozen, as it were, in a very curious look at Darnay, an intent look deepening into a frown of dislike and distrust, not even unmixed with fear. So when they were asking, like, Dr. Manette, like, are you tired? Dr. Manette was strangely looking at Darnay, and the look was that of, what was that? Dislike, distrust, and fear. So he was, I don't know how to demonstrate that to you, but those were the three things that characterized the way Mr. Dr. Manette was looking at Charles Darnay. Nga mura siya, I don't know, he recalled something. With this strange expression on him, his thoughts had wandered away. My father, said Lucy, softly laying her hand on his. He slowly shook the shadow off and turned to her. Shall we go home, my father? With a long breath, he answered, yes. Okay, pause and read until the next conversation, which says, so, Mr. Lorry. Pause. So, Mr. Lorry, men of business may speak to Mr. Darnay now? Nobody had made any acknowledgment of Mr. Carton's part in the day's proceedings. Nobody had known of it. He was unrobed and was none the better for it in appearance. If you knew what a conflict goes on in the business mind when the business mind is divided between good-natured impulse and business appearances, you would be amused, Mr. Darnay. Mr. Lorry reddened and said warmly, you have mentioned that before, sir. We men of business who serve a house are not our own masters. We have to think of the house more than ourselves. I know, rejoined Mr. Carton carelessly. Don't be nettled, Mr. Lorry. You are as good as another. I have no doubt. Better, I dare say. And indeed, sir, pursued Mr. Lorry, not minding him, I really don't know what you have to do with the matter. If you'll excuse me, as very much your elder, for saying so, I really don't know that it is your business. They had no idea that it was Carton's idea because, Carton was just okay with letting Stryver take all the credit. Business. Bless you, I have no business, said Mr. Carton. It is a pity you have not, sir. I think so, too. If you had, pursued Mr. Lorry, perhaps you would attend to it. I'm not going to say that. Love you? No, I shouldn't, said Mr. Carton. Well, sir, cried Mr. Lorry, thoroughly heated by his indifference, business is a very good thing, and a very respectable thing. And, sir, if business imposes its restraints and its silences and impediments, Mr. Darnay, as a young gentleman of generosity, knows how to make allowance for that circumstance. Mr. Darnay, good night. God bless you, sir. I hope you have been this day preserved for a prosperous and happy life. Chair there. Perhaps a little angry with himself, as well as with the barrister, Mr. Lorry bustled into the chair, and was carried off to Tellson's. Carton, who smelt of port wine and did not appear to be quite sober, laughed then, and turned to Darnay. This is a strange chance that throws you and me together. Oh no. Okay. I just get really emotional when it comes. Okay. I don't want to be too obvious, but this is a strange chance that throws you and me together. This must be a strange night to you, standing alone here with your counterpart on these street stones. I hardly seem yet, returned Charles Darnay, to belong to this world again. I don't wonder at it. It's not so long since you were pretty far advanced on your way to another. You speak faintly. I begin to think I am faint. Then why the devil don't you dine? I dined myself with those numbskulls, while those numbskulls were deliberating which world you should belong to, this or other some, or some other. Let me show you the nearest tavern to dine well at. Okay, so pause, read on your own. They went to a tavern, and then okay. Uh, you unpause at do you feel yet? Pause. Do you feel yet that you belong to this terrestrial scheme again, Mr. Darnay? This is after they ate, and of course, Carton had another drink. I am frightfully confused regarding time and place, but I am so far mended as to feel that. It must be an immense satisfaction, he said bitterly, and filled up his glass again, which was a large one. As to me, the greatest desire I have is to forget that I belong to it. It has no good in it for me except wine like this, nor I for it. So we are not much alike in that particular. Indeed, I begin to think we are not much alike in any particular, you and I. Confused by the emotion of the day and feeling his being there with this double of course deportment to be like a dream, Charles Darnay was at a loss how to answer, finally answered not at all. Now your dinner is done, Carton presently said. Why don't you call a health, Mr. Darnay? Why don't you give your toast? What health? What toast? Why, it's on the tip of your tongue. It ought to be. It must be. I swear it's there. Miss Manette then. Miss Manette then. So Carton was like, come on, just give your toast. It's so obvious. And they both knew what that meant, and that was Lucy. So this was kind of like another hint at like Darnay's sort of interest on Lucy. Looking his companion full in the face while he drank the toast, Carton flung his glass over his shoulder against the wall. Ooh, cool! Where it shivered to pieces, then rang the bell and ordered another. Ing ana day na mo drink before, like so after he drank it, he tossed it over his shoulder and it broke. That's not how we do stuff here. Is that how we should start doing stuff here? Can't throw this. It's made of metal. Now, that's the fair young lady to hand to a coat. It says, yeah. In the dark, Mr. Darnay, he said, ruing his new goblet. A slight frown and a laconic yes were the answer. That's a fair young lady to be pitied by and wept for by. How does it feel? Oh my gosh, I just connected a part of the story. So he's kind of like commenting about how does it feel, Kono, to be wept for by a woman like that, like Lucy. Oh no! Okay, you're gonna be able to relate that. Basta, that's gonna be important later. Is it worth being tried for one's life to be the object of such sympathy and compassion, Mr. Darnay? Again Darnay answered not a word. She was mightily pleased to have your message when I gave it to her. Not that she showed she was pleased, but I suppose she was. An allusion served as a timely reminder to Darnay that this disagreeable companion had, of his own free will, assisted him in the strait of the day. He turned the dialogue to that point, and thanked him for it. I neither want any thanks nor merit any, was the careless rejoinder. It was nothing to do in the first place, and I don't know why I did it in the second. Mr. Darnay, let me ask you a question. Willingly, and a small return for your good offices. Do you think I particularly like you? Really, Mr. Carton, returned the other, oddly disconcerted, I have not asked myself that question. But ask yourself the question now. You have acted as if you do, but I don't think you do. I don't think I do, said Carton. I begin to have a very good opinion of your understanding. Nevertheless, pursued Darnay, rising to ring the bell, there is nothing in that, I hope, to prevent my calling and reckoning our parting without ill blood on either side. Carton rejoining, nothing in life, Darnay rang. Do you call the whole reckoning? Said Carton, on his answering in the affirmative. Then bring me another pint of this small wine drawer and come wake me at 10. The bill being paid, Charles Darnay rose and wished him good night. Without returning the wish, Carton rose too, with something of a threat of defiance in his manner, and said, "A last word, Mr. Darnay. You think I am drunk? I think you have been drinking, Sir Carton. Think, you know I have been drinking. Since I must say so, I know it. And you shall likewise know why. I am a disappointment I am a disappointed drudge, sir. I care for no man on earth, and no man on earth cares for me. I care. What about me? Much to be regretted. You might have used your talents better. Maybe so, Mr. Darnay, maybe not. Don't let your sober face elate you, however. You don't know what you don't know what it may come to. Good night." When he was left alone, the strange being took up a candle, went to a glass that hung against the wall, and surveyed himself minutely in it. "Do you particularly like the man?" he muttered at his own image. "Why should you particularly like a man who resembles you? There is nothing in you to like. You know that. Ah, confound you! What a change you have made in yourself! A good reason for taking to a man, that he shows you. Why did I get this chapter? A good reason for taking to a man that he shows you what you have fallen away from and what you might have been. So Carton was reminded of what he could have done with his life if only I think he saw in Darnay what he could have been if he did not make bad decisions. Change places with him. Mm. Change places with him, and you would have been looked at by those beautiful eyes as he was, and commiserated by that agitated face as he was. Come on, and have it out in plain words. You hate the fella. He resorted to his pint of wine for consolation, drank it all in a few minutes, and fell asleep on his arms, with his hair straggling over the table, and a long winding sheet in the candle dripping down on him. Okay, so we have Carton, we have Darnay. They both look alike, but very, very different. Charles Darnay obviously made good choices in life. Carton didn't. And when the reason why he did not like Darnay because he felt a little bit of envy towards him because he saw in Darnay what he could have been. Plus, he saw pagyud nga Lucy had a particular care for Darnay that he knew he would never receive. He knew that Lucy will never look at him the way or feel about him the way she felt for Darnay. Although Lucy was not entertaining romantic thoughts for Darnay, but the concern, the care, the pity, the compassion, he knew that she would never feel that way about him. So why on earth did I get this chapter? I really don't understand. So I hope Ing Ong is gonna get chapter 5, the jackal. That this is a cool chapter. I like this. And then hundreds of people will be mine. I don't remember if hundreds of if hundreds of people is something that it's gonna make me emotional, but let me see. Murag okay raman tingali. Hundreds of people. Wow, it's long. I got a long one. Okay. Okay. Bye, grade 10. Please enjoy. Oh my gosh. I hope you will love this book as much as I do.